Blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up, a farewell, a goodbye to an old friend, person who has meant a lot to this community and a lot to this organization known as the Kevin Miller Show. Before that, Liberty Linda joins us now. Liberty Linda, good morning.
Oh, good morning. Good song, Max. I call Max our little Chinaman.
I don't know if you can say that anymore. And for people that are offended by that, I apologize to keep my job. Go ahead, Liberty Linda.
Oh, well, anyway, we're just teasing him. Do you know that Governor Brad's little last name, do you know if it was Doolittle at one time? Doolittle. And he just dropped the do off and went with little only. I was just wondering about that. So
that's an unsubstantiated allegation that, again, we don't censor people on the program, but where'd you get that one?
Well, Doolittle is a very famous name, but for our governor, I thought maybe it might be a little appropriate, if his name could have been Doolittle, whichever it is, little or Doolittle, then can we just automatically put, if we vote him out, if his name is Doolittle and he does little for us, can we just automatically put in Tommy Alquist?
Well, Tommy had his chance.
Oh, so it doesn't work that way, huh?
No, I think Tommy's busy buying up the state of Idaho and developing it.
Mm-hmm. So if Little does actually do little for us, we can't just automatically put in Tommy Alquist. Well, I was just hoping for that, Kevin. That was my hope this morning.
Well,
So
God,
anyway,
God bless
that
you,
would be-
Liberty Linda, and we'll send your regards to the governor.
Yeah. So anyway, that would be kind of an anti-Pelosi move then. We can't do that here.
No, we can't. We love America here.
Oh, okay. Well, we can try. I just thought we'd try. But anyway, the beeping show on that, your beeping in your show means that you're being watched.
I don't know who's watching us. Maybe it is the governor.
It could be. But anyway, he's a good guy. He knows that we like to have fun on your show, so hopefully he won't take it seriously. Anyway, yeah, and Liberal Steve should be happy that Max is singing a song for him, Liberal Steve is becoming a celebrity, so I think he should lay off Max. So anyway, that's some of my suggestions for this morning.
All right, Liberty Linda, thank you.
And everybody keep listening.
God bless.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Show continues to grow, more popular now than ever, thanks to you. And thanks to a friend of ours. I didn't see any promotion on social media today, but I guess we'll get to that. Our good friend Philip Hardy joining us for a fond farewell.
Good morning, Kevin. Thanks for having me on.
There are so many people that have come into our lives here in Idaho, and you have touched all of us. In the early days of the program, we loved having you on where you would go back and forth with Tea Party Bob and others. If you could go back into a time capsule 10 years ago, when this first program was first here, when you first heard about us, when we first started having you on, what would you tell yourself now heading off to Washington? You've been there for a few years, having worked for the president, worked for pretty much every major politician in the Gem State. What would you tell a much younger Phil Hardy?
Wow. What would I tell me 10 years ago?
Right, about your incredible ride here. And you always have a positive outlook. You're always a coalition builder. And I always appreciated that. So what would you say to yourself 10 years younger?
I would say do your best to stay involved with Idaho politics. Get involved, talk with people, get to know the leaders, because it's a really wonderful state for the level of access that we all have to people who are in elected office. In other states, as you know, Kevin, you go your whole life without ever seeing the governor, without being in a room with the governor or congressman or a senator. Those people are as remote as movie stars in other states, and they're kind of like movie stars in other states. But here in Idaho, they're real people, and they're willing to engage in real conversations with citizens. I think that the people of Idaho are blessed with having a responsive government. You may not always agree with it, but you can really get right up into the grill of just about any elected leader and really chew the fat and get your point across. That's just not going to happen in most places.
Sure, and the Chamber of Commerce appreciates that public service announcement. But
for me, that's what it meant.
But back to you.
Yes.
And by the way, if you want to call in and say goodbye to Phil, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. What amazed me about your life story, and this is a lesson for all of us here, if you've just moved here, if you're starting your life over, you've been here for a while and trying to find your direction, how did you end up in Idaho? Weren't you working for the NBA or something like that in Europe?
I was working at my last incarnation before I moved back to the U.S. I was working for a professional basketball team.
Right. So, again, you're in what country?
In the United Kingdom.
Okay.
Great Britain.
All right. So, Great Britain. How in the world did you go from working for a professional basketball team to getting involved intimately in Idaho politics?
Well, so this is a good tale for people. I was always more than interested in politics, more than interested.
Well, that was your degree, right?
That was my
Political science,
education, right? I got a political science major. So I never got out involved in sort of trying to work with these elected people or candidates, but I would go to events and I would be a donor, small donor, and meet these people. And I did that both in the U.S., back east in New York and New Jersey, and I did it in England as well. So politics was never far from my heart. It's what I always wanted to do. And it just so happened when I got to Idaho, I said, you know what, I'm going to actually make a stab at this. I'm going to do it. And it worked out really well. It's not hard to get involved in Idaho. Again, this is something special about Idaho. If I tried this in California,
let's
forget
go back
it.
to, again,
me.
for the third time.
Oh, God, Kevin.
Here on KIDO Talk Radio, I want to hear how you found Idaho or how Idaho found you.
That's...
Now, maybe I've been mumbling, which my wife accuses me of quite a bit.
Okay, no, you want the exact how.
Because it's fascinating for people that have been here either for a long time or briefly, how people found Idaho or how Idaho found them.
Okay, so that's a very good question. So when my wife and I made the decision that we wanted to move back to the United States, we've been living in England for 12 years.
And you guys are both from east of the Great River.
No, my wife's from California.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but you're from east of the Great River.
I am from east of the Great River.
All right.
So we decided we wanted to move back, but we had no idea where we wanted to move back to. We didn't want to move back to California because it's the land of fruits and nuts. And we didn't want to move to back east because there's, a lot of humidity and it's crowded. We wanted something different. So we made up a list of places that we might want to move to, and we ran it by our families and saw if anybody had any connections. And my wife's mom, her sister had some connections. She knew a bit about the area, about McCall, things like that. And at the same time, when I was working in professional basketball, we were working with the NBA in London on the NBA plays a couple games a year in London. We're meeting with these people, and the one person said, hey, you should come to our minor league tournament. You can learn some best practices. Our executives will be there, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, where is that? And he said, well, it's in Boise, Idaho this year, this coming year. And I was like, oh, wow, that's a place that I'd heard was a pretty cool place to live. So, yeah, I'd be happy to go. So, in short, brought the family. I went to this is when the Stampede was still here. I went to about 16 basketball games. There were people from all over Europe, all over the country, scouts and things like that. And halfway through the trip, my wife said, I really want to live here. And I was like, well, okay. And then one day the moving truck turned up.
Right. So you're a successful young man. You've got a thriving family. You've been involved in the music business. You've been involved in sports. And you come here without a job.
Well, I don't lack in confidence, Kevin.
I understand that, but was that intimidating at all? I mean,
it should have been. But it wasn't. And I'm glad I made that decision. The state is beautiful, and I had faith that something would turn up. And then all of a sudden, of course, the Great Recession hit. But no, we made our way. And
right.
I decided that politics was something I always loved, and I was going to apply myself to it, and it worked pretty quickly. And I have a lot of people to thank for that, Kevin.
Well, and a lot of people will thank you as well, Phil Hardy. But at 580-5436, 580-KIDU, I find it fascinating. culturally going from the United Kingdom to Idaho with no job, with a family, and the recession hits, and you have a lot of confidence. And look, you've networked, you've worked hard. All of a sudden, everybody knows who you are. It's a lesson for all of us.
It is, and that was getting back to my point, which you kind of like, threw cold water on. I don't think this would necessarily have been possible in a lot of other states than Idaho. Idaho is really very welcoming, and the people obviously are friendly, and it's a beautiful place.
Your advice to people that just got here, it's a very different state now. Very different from 10 years ago, from even 2 years ago. Many people from California invading, traffic, blah, blah, blah.
I can tell you a great story, and you're right. This reminds me a lot of 2007 with a lot of people from California coming. So I was at a restaurant downtown, the Chinese restaurant Yanqing, which my wife and I adore, and there are a couple behind us, and this woman is peppering the waitress about neighborhoods to look at, and they were here for 3 days from California. And finally she said, well, how about Emmett? Emmett's a suburb of Boise, isn't it? And I just wanted to double over laughing, But the sad truth is, for a lot of folks in California, the idea of commuting 45 minutes to work, or to downtown is so normal to them, that I don't think that they understand that Emmett's really kind of far, or just a bit of country driving, on Highway 16. So it is like that time again. And, the only thing that I can say, my wife and I, when we came here, we were very culturally alienated in general, from not having lived in the country for about 12 and a half years, that, we came into this, sort of really respectfully. You've got to embrace the culture that is Idaho, and we really wanted to.
You've got to embrace the mountain people.
You really do, and we did, and we loved it, and we drove all over the state, to see what it was like and meet the people. And it's a big state, when you come from back east, I mean, come on, driving to Coeur d'Alene, that's like you drive into from New York to Montreal,
By the way, Liberal Steve says goodbye.
Oh, Liberal Steve, I miss him.
Well, fortunately.
And he was right about hemp.
Well, no, he wasn't. It's still illegal in this state. We stopped it, myself and Governor Little.
It's coming.
By the way, you can always get us on the KIDO Talk Radio app.
There's an app?
Yes, no third-party providers. Just go to the App Store or Google. And
that's awesome. Yes. I can't wait to do that.
We appreciate our great corporate chieftains for having enough faith in us to give us our own app.
Wow.
More coming up with Phil Hardy, a fascinating story from this young man, what we can learn from him, and a goodbye. And we wish him well. And hopefully we'll see him again in Idaho. 580-5436. Coming up next, the political realm locally. And Phil has worked with all of the major characters. What's next and what happens next year? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Our great friend Philip Hardy joining us. A final thought, he gets ready to leave for Washington. Of course, you've been there for quite some time. It's been a challenge for you and your family. You've been living apart for how many years now?
It's been 2 years and 8 months,
right. Almost
2 years, 9 months.
Right. And, of course, on social media, we see your trips back and forth on Facebook. As a husband, as a father, how difficult has that been?
It's a really interesting question. My son just went up to the University of Idaho. He's a freshman. My daughter is a senior at the University of Idaho. They're both Vandals. And, when I took the position in D.C. Just after the glorious election of 2016, it was a question whether or not we moved my son to D.C. for his last 2 years of high school or whether or not we let him finish here at Boise High where his friends were. And, I really couldn't be that guy. We had moved our kids when they were young from England to here. My daughter, it took years for her to, get over that. She didn't like it. My son doesn't remember. But, I didn't want to be that guy. And interestingly, I had a conversation as soon as this happened with Congressman Labrador, then Congressman Labrador. And, and he said, look, you should think about that carefully. And I made the decision to, let them stay here. And I commuted.
That was tough. I can remember many times in D.C. talking to you about this.
Very tough.
And being away from your family. What would you say to people that are pondering the same thing or going through that? I mean,
I don't know if a lot of people do that, Kevin. I mean, that kind of commute,
maybe not to D.C., but living in other places trying to come back. I mean, that's a sacrifice.
When I first moved here, I was told a lot of people would work in Salt Lake or work in Seattle and come back here on weekends. That's nothing. I mean, I could have done that. I mean, that's a 40-minute flight or something like that. You can even drive from Salt Lake, But D.C., it's there's no direct flights. It was awful, and I'm glad it's over. It's too much flying.
Okay, now to get again a little personal here.
Oh, go on.
What does that say about the commitment of your family that they allowed you to do that? I mean, that again, it's a tough world, and that's big ups to them and to you for maintaining everything.
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult for them for sure,
And
It was difficult for everybody, There were a lot of trips to D.C. They got to see a lot of, the parts of, D.C. that a lot of other people don't get to do, which everyone who has kids should take their kids to D.C., when they're in their early teens, when they can understand it. I see families dragging little kids around. That's not a great idea. But when they're in their early teens, I think everyone should do that. And my kids got that opportunity, right? So there's good and bad in it for sure. But I mean, I would come back, twice a month and for 3 days at least at a time. And so I guess I spent a month, a week a month here. And it seems like that's a lot, but I'm telling you, it really isn't, man. It was grim. But it's family. What are you going to do? What
would your advice be to people when it comes to the family?
Obviously you got to stay in touch as best you can. It's a lot easier to stay in touch than it used to be. When I was a kid, my dad was in the Merchant Navy, and he'd be gone for weeks and months at a time, and there was no phones, no texting and things like that. So it's tougher. That was tougher. But I think that one of the things that we all have here is a great community.
Right.
It's totally different here than in other places.
Well, that's why you're leaving, though.
Well, that's why I'm probably coming back one day.
More on that in a minute. Traffic and weather together. KIDO Talk Radio Time, 8:25. Good morning, Dave. No, we don't edit things here. By the way.
Oh, we're back?
Yeah, Donald Trump. We documented his rise.
Yeah.
We had you on.
His rise.
Right, and again, Tea Party Bob, Liberty Linda, Kevin Miller. We were rooting for you on the Trump team when you went to the convention. We had you on multiple times. Donald Trump has saved America. Now he's under siege. We talk about the changing cultural dynamics of what his election meant. Donald Trump Jr. You've worked with them. Your thoughts?
I think that our country is in a much better place than a lot of the liberal East Coast elites want to admit. The economy is doing very well. This is the longest economic expansion in the history of our country. And President Trump has found a way to make that continue to happen while defending America's interests, with the predatory practices of China and the Canadians. So I think that, they're just not wanting to give him credit, and they're never going to give him credit, ever.
You can say that on all the other things, but we go a little deeper here. So what was it like to meet Donald Trump Jr.?
He's a great guy.
I mean, you were on the road with those guys.
Yeah, he's a really, really interesting young man.
Our great friend Lane and others. I mean, these guys.
He's an interesting guy. And he's that guy would absolutely be happy to live, in Idaho and stay in Idaho.
Right.
He is as close to one of the people who are from this state that you could possibly imagine. He loves to hunt, loves to fish. He's a total outdoors guy, bringing up his kids the same way.
Right.
He's really someone that I think that everyone here would resonate with and enjoy, which is why he's very popular on the road almost everywhere. But he really is a man of these people, and the point there being,
you got a funny story about him since you know him behind the camera.
Let me think about that. The point being that he grew up an unaffected guy. So Trump has his bombast and as his favorite word at one time is braggadocio, but I think he brought his kids up in a way that speaks that he's a regular American.
They're
too.
normal.
They're normal. They're normal kids, right?
They're normal.
And I think that really drives the mainstream media crazy. So, as we go into the next election cycle, I think that a lot of people are going to sit down and they're going to get into the voting booth and they're going to say, am I better off than I was 4 years ago? Right? Or as things gradually improved, or this stayed the same, or I feel like, wow, I'm lucky that we haven't had a downturn, or I'm lucky that, there hasn't been another war. They're going to vote for him.
All right. Now you're spinning me. More coming up with Phil Hardy next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. KIDO Talk Radio coming up more with Phil Hardy. First, Fox News Radio's Rachel Sutherland. Rachel, good to have you with us here.
Hey, thank you. Good morning, Kevin.
Little later than usual, but once again, we always want to keep up with all the shenanigans going on Capitol Hill. What's the latest?
Well, there's this breaking news right now. The Inspector General of the Justice Department has released a report. Now, this isn't a big report into investigating the investigators as far as the Russia probe is concerned. This is a singular report focused on the former FBI Director James Comey's behavior after he was fired from the FBI, specifically those memos. Remember those notes he took when he was having conversations with the president-elect and then President Trump, said that he mishandled that information when he leaked it, essentially to a friend who gave it to the New York Times. And you'll remember Comey came out in a public setting and admitted to doing that and said, I did this so I could get a special counsel appointed. So what Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General, is saying is that Comey violated FBI policies. It's a scathing report, but when it comes to the matter of prosecution, at the end they said, okay, he broke the rules as an FBI agent and as head of the FBI, but they are declining prosecution.
Well, this could be very big.
This is a big story because it's just the first report that's coming out of the Inspector General's office. We know that he's been looking into possible FISA court abuses and different activities that went on during the 2016 campaign. So this could just be the tip of the iceberg when it comes to his investigations. It may be a harbinger of things to come for maybe Comey or maybe others who are involved. We've heard certain names thrown out there. And so, yeah, this is going to be big news today. It's just breaking, and some lawmakers are already weighing in. James Comey himself is weighing in, tweeting, it found no evidence that Comey or his attorneys released any of the classified information contained in any of the memos to members of the media. And he goes on, I don't need a public apology from those who defame me, but a quick message with a sorry, we lied about you would be nice. So he's reacting very quickly. So he must have known that this was coming.
And Rachel, in stories like this, you know, it's typical to tip those people off. I know you're very busy. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Let's go to Abe for Phil Hardy. Abe, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Abe, thank you. This is me, Abe. Yes, I heard when Phil was on the last time. I think he was on yesterday, but he wasn't talking, I think, about some of the issues that are important to Boise that I wanted to talk to you guys about today. I heard you in the news was talking about the real estate values and how, you know, you can't afford to buy an apartment in Boise or to rent an apartment or to get a condo or whatever. So, you know, one of the things that we've been doing, and, you know, it works. I always say if it works in New York, if it's good for New York, it's going to be good for the rest of the country. It's the litmus test. You know what a litmus test is?
Just continue on.
So what you do is you can get federal money and you can bring in housing projects. You build housing projects in Boise. What you're going to do is you're going to have people coming in, low-income people who can do these jobs, and the money that's generated from these jobs could support, let's say, housing in other parts of the city. Now, I'm a developer. I'm very knowledgeable about this sort of thing. Hello,
well,
is this on?
Yeah, that's tough to. This is Phil Hardy speaking. You know, those kinds of things don't play well in Idaho, and it sounds like you know it's something that Bernie Sanders would be supporting. And you know, Bernie Sanders doesn't play well here in Idaho. You know, we believe that you earn your money here and you keep your money here, and we don't want federal money for projects.
Listen, federal money. It's going to help the economy. You're going to bring in low-income workers, and then what you're going to do is you can also, some of the people, the homeless, you just throw them in there too, and everybody's going to make money.
You know, you sound like a commie.
A commie? How could I sound like a commie?
You sound like a commie, and we don't want commies here in Idaho.
Okay. That was a fake call.
No.
Come on, bro. Don't be doing shtick on the show.
It's fun.
No, that's a tune-out.
Oh,
that's a tune-out.
He's a commie.
That was contrived.
No.
We don't do that here.
No.
You can go.
Was that Tommy from Star?
You can go to Billy, whatever. Anyway, Phil Hardy joining us here. Kevin Miller in the morning. Let's talk a little Idaho politics. You've worked for all of these guys, worked with all these guys. Raul Labrador is now the chairman of the Republican Party in the state. What's next for him?
I think Raul's going to run for office again. I think he'd like to. I think he feels he has contributions still that he'd like to make, and that he's got, quite a significant level of support in Idaho for another run. Whether it's enough to get him elected is something that, it's only time will tell.
Well, you talk to him. What's his state of mind?
I think he's, he misses the routine, whether he liked that routine or not. He misses the routine, 8 years or whatever it was it's a long time to be doing that. And it's hard not to be doing the same thing that you were doing for a long time.
Well, it's hard for everybody. People lose their jobs all the time.
They do, and
it's hard for the people, Phil.
But it's not a regular job. I mean, you can't say that's a regular job, Kevin. And you don't have a regular job either, by the way. I mean, if you had to, stop doing this.
Phil, I've been fired 5 times. I know what it is to start over.
So it must be really difficult for you not to be running your mouth every day when you've been used to doing it, for hours and hours. It's tough, man.
It's not about me. It's about the people.
It is about the people.
So back to the original point.
So I think that he's going to run for office
again. Could we
again.
see him in a primary coming up in a year?
No.
You're going to guarantee that?
I can't guarantee it, but I don't think he's going to do that.
That doesn't sound like an unqualified no, then.
No, I said no. No, he's not. I you know what? If there's a money exchange, is there a sports book in Boise yet that we can go down and place a bet on this?
We don't promote gambling here, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. They're opening them in D.C., though.
Phil Hardy joining us, Kevin Miller in the morning. So
he's not going to run.
Ever?
He's going to run, but not going to run in a year.
Okay, so what's he going to do? Why is he the chairman of the party?
I think that he feels that he has. Well, look, it has once in the recent past been a springboard to elective office. Phil Batt went from the chairman of the party to governor of Idaho.
Didn't work for Steve Yates.
It did not, but it didn't work by only a little. So it's not.
Why it didn't work for Steve Yates? Great friend of mine. You know why?
Janice got more votes.
The guy didn't advertise in radio. Did a ton of digital and everything else. Did not
advertise on talk radio.
Yeah. Not in radio at all. Did TV, did digital schmidigital, did print ads. Look, you as a political guy know this. Did not go to radio. I go, bro, this is going to hurt you. And it was that little percentage.
Then you know what? Those listeners, your listeners vote.
We vote.
Vote early and often.
So, Tommy Ahlquist, what's next for him?
As I've said before,
you were a Tommy guy before he was Tommy.
Well, no, I did.
I remember when you brought him in here.
I did some work for Tommy.
Right?
Yeah. I think Tommy's still a young man. And this is the
50s young.
Sure, it's young. I mean, come on. Butch Otter is. Jim Risch just announced for reelect. I think Jim is 72 or 74.
That's young.
No, it's not as young as 50. So. Guys like Tommy, guys like...
you think we'll see Tommy again run for office?
I do, sure. Why not?
Well, because he's building everything.
And when you're done building everything, you got to do something else.
I don't know.
Well, I mean
would you rather be a developer or would you rather run for office?
I think at some point you want to be able to try to do something on a larger scale than you could as a developer. There's no way you can achieve more as a developer than as you could as the governor of Idaho.
Make more money, though.
By the time he runs again, I'm sure he might not be needing all that much more money. Tommy doesn't appear to be short of a few bucks. But again, Tommy, Russ, Raul, these are guys who are all about this.
Why did you mention Russ? We haven't mentioned Congressman Fulcher yet.
I just did. Congressman Fulcher.
What about Congressman Fulcher?
I think that he's destined for higher office, for sure.
Such as? By the way, Phil Hardy joining us. KIDO Talk Radio, talking Idaho politics.
I'm fairly certain that he'll run for governor at some point. He may be a U.S. senator. I think that's the natural progression of Idaho politics. You cut your teeth in the state legislature, then you become congressman. Then you either run for senate or you run for governor. I mean, this is how it works.
Doesn't always work out, Phil.
It doesn't always, but it often does. So, and would you mind having Russ Fulcher in the U.S. Senate? Eventually, maybe in 10 years or 15, or as governor in 8 or 10 years? Come on now.
Are you asking me that question?
I am asking you that question.
Or is it a rhetorical question?
No, I'm asking you.
I think, and I have said this to many political operatives in the state, that congressional district deserves someone like Helen Chenoweth, who's going to be there for a while.
Helen was only there for 3 terms.
Let me finish.
Okay.
But people always talk about Helen Chenoweth and what she did, number one. And number two, there's been too much turnover. I'd like to see someone in there because we have too many libs coming in here. And we could have a Walter Minnick get in there again, like Mike Simpson, be in there for year after year after year and really build a base. Whether you like Mike Simpson or not, Mike Simpson has an incredible political network, and his district is probably the safest in the country.
Well, I actually, it's tough to disagree with you on that.
As it usually
for a
is.
small state, that has traditionally also been what you do. You get into Congress and you stay so that you can accrue seniority and you can be in a better position to help. Have influence. Now, getting rid of earmarks has really hurt that. It's hurt the ability for a senior member to be able to bring home the bacon.
I think someone should, and this is my own opinion, someone should be in that seat for a long time because, you're used to working around a bunch of liberals. We got a bunch of invaders coming in here. We got a bunch of libs. We have 2 Ada County commissioners now that are Dems, and they have their sights set on higher office. They're working very feverishly. I've seen them. I know what they're up to, working behind the scenes, and we could be in trouble here if we don't have a strong, solid base in the 1st Congressional District.
Yeah, obviously the two new Ada County commissioners that was a bit of a shock. There's no doubt about that. Just a couple years before T.J. Thompson ran, and T.J. is not exactly a lib. And
wait a minute, T.J. worked to elect Obama, and now he's on the Biden train. How can you say he's not a lib? Nice young man, great family guy, but come on, he was with Obama.
Yeah,
one of the original Obamas.
That is also true. Yeah, you got me on that one.
All right, let's go to the phones. The publisher of the Gem State Patriot, Tea Party Bob, joins us now. Good morning, Tea Party Bob.
Good morning, Mr. Miller, and good morning to you, my friend, the lobbyist.
Bob.
I want to touch base on something here this morning. We've been talking, and Kevin's been talking about, and I want to get your take on this, about this Edmo case. And the governor has been on Fox News, and he's getting all of these accolades for fighting this case. Let me ask you a question. We had a problem going back a few years ago about the inmates in our prison system here, and we send them out of state now. There's over 700, I'm sure there's more than that are being housed in places with 24 more inmates in a cell. And does anybody realize the amount of money that we spend to send these inmates out of state to basically the same company that we fired?
Now, this is the Phil Hardy goodbye show.
Well, why do we need to do this? We're talking about $30,000.
Let's have Phil defend the governor.
Actually, I do know something about this, Bob, and from what I understand, and I may be wrong, and you can clear this up for me, but it is costing the state less money to send these low-risk, non-violent offenders to places like Texas than it is to house them in Idaho due to overcrowded prison populations. So if it's saving the state some money to send these folks to Texas, then how is that a bad thing? That sounds like a fiscally conservative thing to do.
Because of the conditions that they're having down in Texas compared to what they would have here. They're horrible.
Well, I'm not entirely familiar with those conditions, but, getting back to that original case you mentioned, if you lose your liberty, I think that you're not in the best position to demand, 3 or 4-star hotel treatment.
Nobody's asking for that. What I'm saying is that we're giving everybody accolades for this one case when we really have a serious problem with this system.
Oh, good point. Edmo is.
I think that case is ridiculous, and I think that case will be thrown out. I think that if that person is ever eligible for parole from the heinous act that they committed, that they are then free to get that surgery and pay for it themselves, but it doesn't need to be paid for by the taxpayers of Idaho.
Pro-Life joins us now on the Phil Hardy Goodbye Show. Good morning, Pro-Life.
Well, I like Phil Hardy and listening to him, but let's get serious about this transgender stuff. All 3 of the prominent Republican candidates for governor, they all would not answer the question as to anything when I asked them on the radio about should we outlaw transgender surgeries in Idaho. They all said, no, we're not going to do that unless it's with public money. Now, that's the wrong answer. Transgender surgery is a terrible crime. It should be against the law. You can't even do it. Now, as for Governor Little, his position right now should be that this is not going to happen. We're not going to go to the federal courts, and we're not going to have it hashed out there because it's not going to happen. We're not going to spend a lot of money for attorneys fighting this.
Well, duly noted, pro-life. Sorry for the abbreviated version. More with Phil Hardy next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And welcome back, our great friend Philip Hardy joining us. A couple questions for Phil. Liberal Steve, will Paulette Jordan ever run again?
You know, that's an excellent question. I think that she probably will because she found a way to make a lot of money off running for governor. I think that there was never a really good post-mortem on where all the money went that she raised.
But the scary thing about Paulette Jordan is she was a horrible candidate, ran a horrible campaign. I mean, you do this for a living and still got, 40% of the vote?
But that's what a Democrat always gets.
But the libs are growing, Phil. I'm worried. The libs.
That's not true. You know, a lot of the people from California who are moving here.
We have 2 Ada County commissioners that are Democrats.
Yeah, that might have been also a function of bad candidates on our side. So I think that a lot of the people moving here from California are Republicans who are they're refugees. They're political refugees, Kevin. They're not libs. The libs don't want to really live here, you know? So
the libs are growing, folks. You heard it here first.
I thought the same 10 years ago, and it's not true.
Says the man who's leaving us.
Well, look.
Isn't it odd?
Duty calls.
All the good people that have been with us, Tea Party Bob, now the mayor of New Meadows, Idaho.
Is he really?
Well, that's what we say here.
Oh.
And Philip Hardy leaving us. This is why we don't cut and run, folks. We are here for you.
New Meadows is such a beautiful place.
Here's another question from Katie. Does Phil think the child and dependent care credit regarding the federal income taxes will be changed to help the middle working class? You're in D.C. What do you think about that?
Wow, I honestly, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I do think that there's always going to be some tweaks to the tax code. I wish I had a better answer for Katie.
So do I. Traffic and weather together, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave. And here we are back with Philip Hardy, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Your thoughts?
Kevin, one of the things I really do want to mention is, and you and I have developed a really tremendous friendship. I believe it's a tremendous friendship. I hope you do too, over the last 10 years. And just because I'm going to be in D.C. doesn't mean I'm not going to be at the other end of the phone, to hang out. I know you're going to come to D.C. in September, do a lot of good work for the people by interviewing our elected leaders and getting answers to questions that need to be asked. And I look forward to seeing you out there. We're going to maintain this relationship for as long as I am out there in D.C., and it's not forever. This is God's country here. There's only so much time that a man can spend in the swamp, without just getting stinky. So I think, and you don't think a lot of people move back to Idaho, but tons of people move back here. The mountain people are the salt of the earth, and I do think I'm going to be living here again. And don't forget, when I've got friends like you here, it's always a big lure.
Well, Phil, we make this show about the people, and I've said this to you many times, and I want to always thank you for early on realizing the value of this show, this audience. It used to be we would put you on and you'd go toe-to-toe with everybody, and you loved it.
Yeah, that was fun, actually.
Yeah, you loved it. And
there were times I would come on and you'd be mean to me.
That's how I show my affection.
Oh.
Honestly, it really is. It's a really dysfunctional thing that I probably should go to therapy for, but it's how I show my affection. I just want to publicly thank you for being our friend and for giving me guidance, a lot of guidance that I didn't want to hear, particularly on being here in Idaho, and we wouldn't have succeeded without you.
Well, I think that you're an asset to Idaho. People here love you. Your audience loves you. Your ratings are through the roof, as they should be. And it's because, you give the people what they want, and you give a voice to the people of Idaho. So you just keep on being you, Kevin. That's for sure.
Well, we will, and Ray's going to miss you, and
see you, Ray.
Ray's going to miss you. We're going to miss you, but we want to thank you. I'm very proud of you.
Oh,
very proud of you.
Well, that's too kind, and I'm very proud of you building this empire at KIDO.
Well, hopefully they'll let me stay.
And on FM now too.
The
it's
libs,
fabulous.
the libs, they don't like.
They
the
don't
FM.
like you.
Yeah.
No, the libs don't like you at all.